Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Parent Training Video. It's myself, Daniel, and Shauna, and we are here to give you some more training for you as parents at home as you disciple your kids. On this week, we want to talk about more focusing on kids who may have fallen away from their faith. And of course, this is an issue that we see. Doesn't matter what kid you have or how you raise them, but sometimes you do the best you can, and whatever you do, for some reason, they just don't believe anymore. And especially as a young adults pastor, this is something I see that happens with young adults as well. Like they come out of youth ministry and they just fall off, and it doesn't matter if you have great parenting or if they've gone to church all their life. And so we're seeing the responses from young adults that church may not be a priority, or it's not relevant to their lives. They're too busy. They feel like it's not authentic, and their experience of church may also play into that. But Shauna, do you have any experience with why young adults would fall off?
Yeah, I think there's lots of literature out there today on the topic and lots of things. I think, though, a couple things come to mind when I look at this and think of, people in my sphere of influence that I know. I think we underestimated the influence of postmodernism, where, there is no absolute truth and we tolerate everything and we're inclusive of every thought and every train of thought and every idea. And we approve everything, and so that came to our kids, in school, and now we have social media, so many influences, right? And it was subtle. I mean, I think I've had it come at us with a bright blaring neon sign, we would have been aware of it, but we weren't,
Right.
and it was subtle. And so because the church takes a stand on different topics, right? And I hope we do that in love, but because we've taken a stand on certain things, there's just a group of kids that are like, well, you're not tolerant and inclusive, therefore I don't want to be a part of this group of people.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I think some other things is that, to some degree, there's a whole maybe generation of parents or group of parents that kind of relegated the development of faith, an authentic faith, to the church. And we cannot, what's the quote? We don't church our kids into faith, right? That 1 or 2 hours a week is not enough. And so if kids weren't seeing that authentically lived out in their homes, or were able to have those conversations about faith in their homes, they didn't see the relevance of it, right? And so those are a couple reasons. I mean, there's probably a myriad of reasons why kids actually walk away, right? There's other trauma and tragedy in lives that happen. But those are a couple things that I can think of, so if kid,
For sure. And we don't want to spend too much time talking about the reasons, because I'm sure parents at home personally have their own reasons. And we recognize this can be a very delicate topic, because
absolutely,
you as a parent may feel like you have tried everything and you believe that you've raised your kids to be well, and but then for whatever reason they fall away. And so this is a delicate topic, because it's personal. And it sucks, and it's heartbreaking. But we wanted to give you some tools and about how we can tackle this together, and how we can view it in a way that may give the best chance to help your kids to know what to do when they're in this situation.
Right.
So I can start us off here. I think that my experience in youth ministry, it's just looking at the kids. I'll tell you now, I think maybe half of the kids in our youth ministry don't believe, and that might be startling to some people, but I think for me as a youth pastor, I think that's actually great success, because they have felt comfortable enough to participate with us week in, week out, and feel like they belong. And we worked really hard so that the youth leaders, don't make sure that everyone feels like they belong before they believe. And at times it is heartbreaking that I wish like I could just grab them and say like, this is what you should believe. But at other times it's just this sense of like, no, God's got it under control. And so huge thing is to listen to them. I think uh, sometimes they don't have the words or the thoughts yet, or the feelings, to know what is happening on the inside or what they truly believe. And so just giving them that space without judgment or giving your own opinions, to let them talk and express what is happening on the inside. When those moments come out of doubt, it's just taking those times to really slow down and give them that space to listen. And I think that's really important because they want to feel heard and valued. And I think this
Yeah.
is a great tool to do it when they're young, but also to cultivate that in your relationship with them as they grow older.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Building relationship, right? Because that's what our faith is. It's a relationship between ourselves and God, and we do that, by um, talking to God and being with Him. And so we need to do the same for our kids, right? And so, yeah,
Mhm.
building relationship constantly, just allowing them to talk and to express their doubts and concerns and questions, right? And creating that space for them is beautiful. That's your interesting stat for you with your youth. For kids here at the church, I am absolutely amazed at how many kids study scripture, know it well, have family devotion times. So I am really encouraged by what parents are doing.
Mhm.
With some of our children here at the church, I'm seeing that parents are working very intentionally to build authentic faith in their kids, and I'm excited by that. So that in my heart or in my mind means that they are having those conversations and they are allowing their kids to participate and listen, and they're able to see authentic faith being lived out in their homes, which will serve them well in the years to come. I think for those parents who, though, as we're talking, have had kids, question faith or walk away from it, I think it's important for them to recognize and just acknowledge that's a huge disappointment. It's a
Mhm.
massive disappointment as a parent. And there's all sorts of opportunity to go back to, I didn't do this, I should have done this, I should have said that, I didn't, that whole burden of regret. And I think that I just would love to give permission to parents to say, release the regret, and give it to Jesus and be done with it. And don't keep coming back to it. We are not perfect people, and we're not perfect parents, and we're all going to do things that some things we were going to do that we didn't even realize at the time was not a good idea, right? And
Mhm.
only years later are we going to discover. And then there's some things, we're sinful people too. We're going to be selfish at times, and there's certain things we're going to do that, yeah, might cause hurt to our kids. But it's just giving that over to Jesus and letting Him clean us and cleanse us of all that regret and move to a place of hope, because He's a God of hope.
Yeah.
And I think, just praying and waiting, and knowing that time, God is not wasting this time where our kids are, outside their faith, outside of faith relationship with Christ. God is not wasting that time. He's doing something in their heart and mind and their life.
Mhm.
And we just, yeah, we need to give that over and know God has something better in store for them. I'm sure that we want it to happen, in an instant, in the snap of the fingers, but
Yeah.
who knows how God is working out His good purposes in that child.
Hmm. And and this is so important. What Sean and I are saying is to cultivate this relationship with your kid, because we think of the alternative, which is to argue your way for them to believe, and that has proven not to be effective. Like my proof of that is just think about how you have come to faith. It wasn't because someone argued you into believing. It was, and you can't come with all the facts, and you can't nitpick every issue that your child comes to you with, and to argue them, because you may win the argument, but you're not going to win that relationship. And so
Mm-hmm.
just really being able to cultivate that environment where they can come to you with their questions, and
Yeah.
being able to listen to them well, and then grieving uh, just the loss of what could have been, and that their faith that is they're just off their journey, and then just hoping and praying. These are all
Mm-hmm.
just great things that we want to help you as a parent instill into your kids.
Yeah, I think too, like, going back to your point on not arguing, I think that, it's just important for us to share our faith, the reason why we believe, the reason for the hope that we have, right? And scripture tells us that that is what changes hearts and lives. It's when I believe this about God because I've experienced this and I've read this
Yes.
word,
Mm.
and not forcing it on anybody, but just sharing our story of how we've been impacted by the gospel and what faith means to us, and just allowing God to take those words and use them however, in a child's life, and allowing them to doubt and to
Yes.
bring their claims, their skepticism forward, and just saying, I don't know about some of the things that you're talking about or whatever. Let's research that together. Let's talk about that together. Let's look at all sorts of points of view, and maybe at the end of the day, some of those conversations are you just agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I believe this and you believe that. Right now, we can agree to disagree in love,
Mm-hmm.
and end some of those conversations that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of a quote that Andy Stanley says, and it was quite startling when I first read it. He says his goal for parenting kids is not to have perfectly behaved kids.
Yeah.
And I think in the back of a lot of minds of parents is they believe that's their goal, and that's a lot of pressure to raise kids that will not embarrass you and will do well and have good grades. And then
Yeah.
one day that when they choose not to believe, that can be very detrimental to you as a parent. But what Andy Stanley is saying is not to be the permissive parent either. He's not saying that it's a
Right. Yeah.
but what he's saying is, if you raise your kids with the relationship in mind over just a set of rules and values, then you're going to have a different outlook in how you parent your kids.
Yeah.
He says you're going to break your own rules. You're going to you're going to change on the fly because in this moment your kid needs you, and so and if you have that goal in mind of having the relationship first, you will see that uh, your kids will have a space that they can come back to. And he says he paints the picture of he wants to create an environment where the kids want to come home even when they don't have to, where the kids want to hang out with the parents even when they don't have to. And so that's a really beautiful image of what
Yeah.
relationship can be. And
Absolutely.
especially if a kid is really struggling with their faith, to know as they're struggling that parents are going to be there for them, going to love them,
Right.
and they can come back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, there's no perfect parents, right? And there are also no perfect children. And I can tell you that from working with kids here at the church, as much as I was saying, lots of these children have a deep faith with Christ and they know his word and they pray well and, all that kind of stuff. They also do all sorts of things, they poke their neighbor and they don't share well and they, all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So again, our goal, we've talked about this before, Dan, our goal can't be behavior, right? It's got to be heart change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important. And that comes about, right, by when they encounter Jesus and they see Jesus authentically in other people. Then their hearts are changed. One other thing I was just thinking of too, Daniel's, I would elicit the help of other parents, and I would elicit the help of people who will pray for your kids too, and we did that long ago. We actually happened to live outside of Regina at a different ministry place we were at, and there was a lot of retired folks there who prayed over our kids at the time, who were 2 and 5 years old. And some of those people, if I see them today, they're very elderly today, and they will remind me that they're still praying for my kids. And I think that's important, right? To have a cloud of witnesses or the village, as we've talked about, right? Praying for our children and keeping them abreast of, so-and-so struggling, and, can you pray for them? That's another way that we can involve other people and bring these, our kids before the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's a very difficult topic, and I'm anticipating when I have kids myself, to have this posture. I mean, it's easier said than done, But
Well, I was a perfect parent before I had children, Daniel. I was a really awesome parent. I have to tell you, I looked at
that's
other
great.
people and thought, my kids will never do that. And then your
Yeah.
kids do things even worse, right? So yeah,
That's a good word.
yeah.
um,
Well,
but
I just, I just want parents yeah, embrace hope, right? Embrace hope and love, pray, and wait. And if this reaches and touches somebody, I'd love to chat with you. And
mm,
so send me an email at shauna@mylivinghope.ca and we can talk more about this.
okay. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
See ya.